So, welcome to the first episode of the Get Learned podcast. My name is Nathan. I guess that's important to talk about. Um, I don't know if this camera setup is good. I might change it. But the whole point of the podcast is to kind of talk about life lessons, learning things I've learned, and eventually I do want to bring on other people to kind of see their perspective on things and maybe take away some things, or maybe I can help them. And I think this whole podcast is kind of geared towards um, helping other people. Maybe you're going through something, or maybe you feel like you're alone, or just want to hear some people talk. Try to keep it lighthearted and have a good time. So now that we got that out of the way, so what this is about. This episode kind of wanted to talk about moving. In the past couple of years, I've kind of moved around a lot, and I think it's changed me for good. I think for the most part, I think a lot of growth happened in the past couple of years. So I grew up mainly in the same area. Um, had some really close friends there, and then during the pandemic, moved away from them, moved with my family to somewhere else, and was kind of distant from that. But I think out of that, I was able to gain like a closer relationship with my family. Like, I didn't know anyone where we moved, and I think me and my sister got really close, which was really cool to see. We weren't as close when I was younger, so kind of with the pandemic, we got a lot closer, and I think that helped us, our relationship. And then kind of towards the middle of the pandemic, I got a job, and I moved to Utah, um, which I had lived there for a little bit. I played hockey growing up, so I moved out there when I was a senior in high school to go play. Didn't work out, didn't really like it, but the job kind of forced me to move to Utah. And that was a whole learning experience. It was like first time moving out of my parents' house and being on my own, and I was like, I don't know how far it is, but it was pretty far. I mean, you got to fly to get there fast. I think it was like a 14-hour drive, and like I drove there by myself, and it was different. It was different to like be in my own place and not have family or really know anybody, and kind of I didn't know how to build a community on my own. Also, I worked all the time. I was working 12-hour shifts. It sucked, and I think that really took a toll on me. I think like my whole reason for moving there was work. So I was super focused on work, and I work night shifts, so I'm tired on the weekends, and it's weird, and I don't. It was just a huge change in my life that I don't think I was really ready for. Um, but I took the job. I think I was there for not too long. I got there in February and moved back home in September. So it wasn't a long time. Um, and in that, like, I think I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about myself. And I think that was the first time I encountered any sort of like mental health struggles. So overall, like, terrible experience for me. I think I felt really down on myself. I think it was like probably one of the lowest points in my life. But at the same time, I'm not saying I'm grateful for it, but I was able to gain a lot of perspective and learn a lot about like my responses to situations and kind of areas that I can improve on, which I never really encountered before. I think I lived a pretty normal-ish life and didn't nothing was really that crazy to me. Like, I grew up playing hockey, so I was like focused on that. And I think this was the first time I was like on my own, didn't have anything other than work. Um, I was in a pretty rough relationship that really took a toll on me. And through that was the first time I encountered therapy, the first time I started doing it. And it was super helpful with me moving and being on my own. I don't think I would have taken that step, um, especially if I was surrounded by friends, because the way I looked at it prior to all of that happening was, I guess, therapy. Like I knew about it, I knew it was helpful, I knew people that were in therapy, but I always figured like, oh, I'll never need that. And it was a really big eye opener to see how helpful it can be. And yeah, I think it's just a weird place to be in. I think realizing that this thing you thought you would never need, it's like, oh wow, like I definitely need this, and I can definitely benefit from something like this. So that was that, which was crazy. Moved back home, still didn't have any friends really, didn't have a sense of community. I was there for a couple months and then ended up moving out to Texas, um, which is where I'm at now. So that's been different. I think I've always lived on more of the West Coast side. I've never really been in the South. Um, and I think it's been a really big learning experience, a big learning curve. And when I first moved here, I kind of encountered similar things. Like, I have some family here, but we're, it's not like the family that like I grew up with. So I think it feels a little bit different, not necessarily in a bad way. Um, and I'm grateful that they are here and that they've been here to support me and things like that. But I think on a personal sense, it's been a huge learning curve on how to like make friends and put myself out there and just handle things and be able to grow. I first got here, got a job. It's probably the worst job I've worked. Super like abusive boss. Yelled at us for like 2 weeks straight. Told us we're all terrible people. Um, but out of that, I made a really good friend there, who I still hang out with now. So which is cool, and I guess we bonded over how awful our job was. Um, and then with that, like I started branching out. I started writing. Um, I write poetry, maybe kind of delving into fiction at some point. I don't know. Um, but yeah, like I write poetry, so I started to go to these open mics, and it was a fairly new thing for me to start writing poetry. It was never. Oh, I wanted to do it when I was younger, but I think I just had this like weird mentality towards it. Um, but now being by myself, I was like, oh, I'll write, and I was sad at the time, so it just seemed like a good outlet for me. Um, so yeah, so I started going to these open mics. I started going to these writing workshops, and it's been interesting. Like, I don't think I've ever built like a community on my own. It's always been through like, I have a friend and they do this, and by association, their friends are not my friends. It's never been like, oh, I've made these connections on my own. Maybe playing hockey, like that's when I made them on my own. But I think we were just there to whatever sake, like community. We all did the same thing, so it's like we were all there, and we're on a team, so we had to talk to each other. But with all the people that I've met here now, like there was really no reason for us to be friends. And it's been cool. It feels like I've built something, and it feels like I'm a part of something that I've built, and it's nice. Like I don't feel that same feeling like comparing it to when I moved to Utah, where I felt super alone and didn't know anybody and didn't make an effort to really meet anybody. Here it's like the first couple months I was here, I was like always out. I was either go to writing workshops, I would go to these like whatever artist gathering things, um, and made a lot of cool connections. Like I don't talk to everybody that I've met, but there's like a select group of people that we all kind of write together. We workshop things and like kind of try to improve on our writing, and it's like kind of built this like common bond between us. And it's just like a lot of things, like new hobbies that I've picked up. And in all honesty, I think like moving, like yes, when I moved here, like I had a really hard time as well, but it's really helped me develop into who I am now, and having my own values and feeling like I have a voice and I can speak about these things. And I don't think ever in my life I've felt that way. I've had a lot of like issues with kind of talking, just in general. I was always afraid of like feeling dumb, feeling like people were gonna judge me. But here, like knowing nobody, I think it could have either gone two ways. It's like, oh, I'm scared that people are gonna judge me because, or they're gonna think I'm dumb and they're not gonna want to be my friend. But I guess the way I looked at it was, I was like, I'm gonna have to take a risk at some point, um, or else then it's just gonna repeat itself. Like I'm not gonna know anybody. I'm gonna be alone and bored, and all I'm gonna do is work. And overall, it's just a nice feeling to have built this community. Like right now, well, not right now. Yesterday, I went to an open mic that I go to every month and got to perform, and like I know a good amount of people there, and so it's like we all sit together, and I was like, that's cool. I've never had that. And then 2 days ago, me and a friend started a writing workshop for younger people, um, younger as in like under 35. It's like a writing workshop, um, and we started this like we're working with a nonprofit to like get people together. In our first meeting, I think we had like 12 people show up, which is a pretty good turnout for like a first thing, like a first meeting. um, and it was cool like to see these people get together, see this thing that I've been a part of, see this thing that like I've helped build, and it's like giving back to a community that I haven't been a part of for very long, but it's really helped me. And just being able to branch out and not really feel that fear anymore. Um, and I guess right now we're going over like the good things about moving and the things that like I've learned to appreciate about making this move. And it's just the sense of like fulfillment in community building, um, and being able to like support myself and kind of do my own thing, which is, it's a good feeling to have, like not being so tied to like a singular thing or person, whether it be a relationship or relying on family for everything. It's like I'm, for the most part, self sufficient, I think. I mean, I pay rent, I pay my bills. Um, so that's like that sense of fulfillment. And I think also pushing myself into uncomfortable situations. There's this YouTube channel called Yes Theory, and they've kind of influenced, like for the past couple of years I've watched them. I haven't watched them recently, but their whole thing is like, oh, say yes to things because when you're uncomfortable is when you grow. And I think I really took that to heart, moving here, because like when I went to my first writing workshop, I was like two weeks into writing. I didn't write anything, and I know a lot of people, like at least me, like last year I never would have gone to that. Like that would have terrified me because I'm like, oh, they're gonna judge me, I'm not good. And the way I saw it this time was like, oh, I have nothing to lose. Like don't in a way, like I don't care. Like I enjoy it, it's cool, and I can only get better. Like I don't think I can get worse from not knowing anything. So it was like always opportunity to grow. And on the same note of hobbies, like aside from writing, like started rock climbing. Never thought I would do that, and I've made some good friends out of that, of rock climbing. It's a different way for me to stay fit, and it's just overall it's been a good feeling to feel like I'm trying new things. I'm trying things I probably wouldn't have tried in the past, and it's because of moving around. It's because of kind of being on my own. Like I really have nothing else to do, so I might as well do these things. Might as well try to figure out what to do while I'm here in my free time. So I guess that's a good thing. I think to sum it up, I think we're talking about growth in terms of self-discovery, talking about trying new things, building community. Those have all been great things about moving here. Um, and I guess moving over to things that have impacted me, I think I'm a pretty big like family person. Um, and not saying like I want to rely on my family for everything, but it recently it's been, I think, weighing on me a little bit more than it did when I first moved here. I think it's that feeling of like when you first do something and like you're in a new place, it's like, oh, I want to do all these things and like this is all new and it's cool. And now that things have kind of settled, and I'm not really like, I have friends, I have community, I have hobbies. It's like I think the only thing I'm missing is that like family connection. So I think that's been hard for me recently. Um, and yeah, like I've always been at home with family, like, and being away from them is weird, and especially like considering how far it is, and it's just expensive. Um, I think a lot of people when they first move out, it's like, oh, I'm gonna move to maybe this next city over, and it's still driving distance. For me, it's like a 24. It's like a full day of driving to get home, or it's like a $600, $700 flight, um, which is a pain financially. So that's been hard. It's been weird, um, and it's like a sense of I like having my own space, but I think I like having the option to be with family too. And recently, like I went back to where I grew up and got to see my grandparents, got to see some old friends, and just that sense of like people that I've known for a long time. I think I missed that, and I don't think I would have realized how much I missed it if not having gone and seen them. Because it's kind of just been in the back of my mind. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't seen them in a while, but I didn't have plans to see them. But after actually hanging out with them, seeing them, like talking about, like with friends, like things that happened like 5, 6 years ago. It's like I don't have that connection with anybody right now. Not to say that it can't happen, but it's just nice to have a bond with someone that you've known for a while. And all my friends live like all over, so it's hard to have that. And I don't know. I think recently it's been kind of feeling lonely. Um, like I have a girlfriend and things are great, and I'm happy with where things are going, but I think in terms of like family and really close friends that I've grown up with, it's like I kind of miss that. Um, on top of that, I think where you are, and at least for me, it's been super apparent is like scenery, and I really took scenery for granted. Like growing up, there was mountains, there were trees, there was the beach, you could drive an hour and go snowboard. So it's like going from that to here, where it's just there's nothing. I mean, there's some trees. Like I say, there's nothing, but now that I'm like driving around and like now that spring has sprung, it's like things are blooming. It's a little bit more green, and it's not as bad as I make it out to be, I guess. But it's just so flat, and it just feels so big and open. I don't know. I don't know. Like I didn't think I would be someone who's like, oh, I miss the mountains. Like I've never been like an outdoorsy person who's like, oh, I want to be in nature all the time. But it's it's weird. It's weird now because I do want to be in nature all the time. Like I feel like I'm going through this weird shift of kind of figuring out who I am, what I want, and it's like I miss seeing like trees and like really tall trees, or like having the option to go like on a hike, which I never wanted to do before, but now I'm like, oh, now that I can't, I miss it. And maybe that's just like that whole thing where like when someone says you can do something, you want to do it more, or like, oh, don't watch that, and it's like, oh, now I want to watch it. Like I think not having the option to do it has made me want to do it. So it's like I wish I could go camping more, or go hike, or go get lost in the forest. I recently bought a truck, so I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Like I can go drive into the mountains and like go camping or whatever. Whereas like here, it's like I can't do any of that. And I mean, I could go camping, but it's just like flat lands. And I guess when I think of camping, I think of like trees and like a forest, maybe a lake or the beach. Like all of that is what my idea of camping is. Like I don't think the appeal of like desert camping has really been there for me. So it's just, I guess, just trying to figure out what it is that I'm trying to do, and I guess, do I want to move again? is the big question that's been kind of like weighing on my mind. Um, I just don't know if this is somewhere that I would consider to be home. Like, yeah, like right now I've made something out of it, but I just don't think it'll feel like home. I've read and I've heard from people that it takes a couple of years for something to feel like home and feel like this is where you want to be. But I don't know. I don't know if I will feel that way about this place. And at the same time, I guess it's like going back to what I mentioned before about like, oh, I've made friends, I've built community, I've like done these things, give back to the community. It's like, do I really want to do that again? And that's what's been kind of deterring me from actually, I guess, deciding to move again. Aside from like the relationship as well. Um, so I think right now, like I'm kind of just sitting on it, trying to make the best of the situation now, and not think too much into it. I went a couple days where I was just like feeling super down, and I think just super stressed about where my life was going, and I feel like I'm in this like weird little lull of like space where I'm not really doing all these new things. I've done them, and now this thing is built. Like my life here is kind of, for the most part, put together. I have a job. It's cool. Um, I have friends. I have hobbies that I like to do. I'm joining a hockey team out here, so it's like I have everything that I would need, and I just don't know why it feels like something is still missing. Um, and I don't know if any of you have like moved around, or like if you've ever gone through the same thing, but it's just a weird place to be, and I guess I don't know the best way to address it. I'm, for the most part, like I feel happier, and I think it's this weird comparison of like this place isn't this place, and I miss the things about this place that aren't here. And I think you can do that with anywhere, but for me, having moved around a lot and not really like settling down or like having roots somewhere for the past 3-ish years, 3 4 years, um, it's, I think I just don't know what that feeling is like. Like I've moved around a lot and I've always like been ready to move. So it's, I don't have that same feeling of other people when they're like, oh, but I have all these things, I don't want to move. Like for me, I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And I think it's that like lack of fear, the lack of fear of moving, that is also like pushing me to move. And there's not a crazy amount of things tying me here. So it's like if I had been here like 25 years, like my entire life, and like I went to school here, I had friends here, my family was here, um, then yeah, I would be afraid of moving. I totally get that, like because this would have been all I've ever known. But for the past couple of years, it's I've been everywhere, not everywhere, but like I don't think I've lived in the same state for an entire year yet, um, which is crazy to think about. Um, and it's hard. Like it's hard and it's not. I don't know. It's such a weird position because on one hand, like I want to see what happens here. Like keep building things, keep like building connections and relationships, and kind of see what my life would be like here. And on the other hand, it's like, what if there's something else? Like, what if I find a career somewhere else, or with these hobbies that I'm trying to get into, like I can do them over there, and I could be closer to family. And I think those are my two biggest things. It's like I'm stubborn and I want to see what I can do here and keep going, but I also like miss my family. I miss friends, and like me moving. If I were to move closer to home, like I'm gonna be further away friends still, but I'll be closer to family. If I move closer to friends, I'm going to be far away from family. If I stay here, I'm far away from both, but I have what I've already built. And so like that's my predicament right now. And I think it's going to take more time for me to really figure out what the plan is. My lease is up in a couple months here at my current place, so it's like, do I sign a new lease somewhere else in the area, or do I think about moving? Um, and I don't know. I think my whole plan a couple months ago was to move, and I started thinking about like the community that I've built, and do I want to redo that? Like I've mentioned, also like this relationship is pretty new, and I want to see what happens. Like see it through, and like it feels like something that could be really good, and I don't want me moving to like impact that and having to start over and find a new job, and this job treats me well, and is it going to be the same? Is it going to be one of those like grass is greener things? I think there's all these questions going through my head, and I have zero answers for any of them. And as a person who likes to have answers, it's hard to just sit here and not have answers. So I guess a lot of this podcast was to like help build new connections, help foster these relationships with people, get to know them more. That I can learn from them. Maybe they moved around a lot, like kind of see how they built things here, and maybe people from other states too, like whether it be like just a Zoom call or something like that. I think that could be interesting. But yeah, this has just been me rambling about like moving, and I hope you enjoyed the first episode. I don't know if it's gonna stay in this format of me rambling or if it could move to being something more scripted. I guess I'll get feedback on what works. Also the camera setup. I don't know. This is all new, and I guess that's part of the exciting thing is starting something new. And I guess in a way this is also me trying a new hobby and like being fulfilled in something else. Like I did the poetry, I'm doing the poetry, at rock climb, hockey, and now podcast. So see where this goes, and maybe this could help me kind of get some answers and find general direction. But on that note, I think that's all I got for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Get Learnt podcast, episode 1 of however many. Hopefully, I can do this every week and keep up with it. I've got a few topics that I want to talk about, a few people I want to talk to. So see how this thing rolls and how it turns out. But thanks for listening. I will see all of y'all next time.